Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what's the worst way you've seen someone fuck over their spouse? She took the cats. He wanted the cats. Looked like courts would give him the cats. She had the cats put down. I literally gasped. That is a special kind of evil. Poor kitties. Bad separation. Wife filed a restraining order on the husband. Very common. Wasn't a terrible guy but not great either. A year into the divorce his mother was dying. He asked his sister to speak with his ex-wife and asked to bring the kids to see her in the hospital before she died. The wife never did. Instead she went to the court and said he violated the restraining order by trying to contact her. You can't contact someone through another party. He admitted it and explained the situation, but was found in breach of the order. His mother died while he was locked up and the wife never brought the kids to see her. Story from my parents who are lawyers. So throughout the divorce proceedings, there was a car that was a huge point of contention between the husband and wife. After months and months of saying he would never let the wife have the car, the husband concedes in exchange for something great, like one of their summer houses. It turns out he had been driving the car for 3 hours every day in a big loop around the city, putting thousands and thousands of miles on it, basically making it worthless. The amount of planning and spite that went into that was amazing. I just imagine him driving around listening to self-help audiobooks about how to find inner peace. Dad was a real a-hole and Mom tried to save him a lot of money during the divorce. They have 3 kids who were 16, 13, and 8. Dad wouldn't sign any agreement my mom's lawyer produced. It had to be his idea and from his lawyer or it wasn't getting signed. Dad's lawyer was incompetent and sends an agreement that states he will pay $2,000 a month in child support until all kids are 18. Mom tried to explain to Dad that it needed to be revised to lower every time a child turned 18. Dad called Mom a cunt during that negotiation, so Mom said fuck it and signed the agreement, and Dad paid the $2,000 month for 10 years when he should have been paying around $1,400 month for 5 years and $700 month for the last 5 years. Not a lawyer, but when I was a kid my parents got divorced. My mom met a guy on the internet and left my dad for him. My sisters and I were all teenagers, and being that my mom had never really been around, decided that we all wanted to live with him. We all had to write a letter stating our wishes and it was understood that we would stay with him. My mom didn't even seem to care. Additionally, my dad had this retirement account from his old job. He wasn't rich at all and had worked his ass off for everything he'd ever had. When he got hurt on the job he could have sued, but was promised that in exchange for him not suing, they'd keep him around. Instead they canned him and he left with about $100,000, I think, in a 401k type account that he'd been saving for nearly 30 years. Lastly, my dad had his house. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath brick house that was all of about 800 SF. It wasn't much at all, but my dad loved the place. My mom couldn't stand that house and wanted to move for as long as I could remember. That was another contentious subject that led to the divorce. He'd been paying on it forever, and when he left his old job, he took out a small chunk and paid it off. Anyway, their separation is progressing and it's understood we're living with him. She was so in love with this internet guy that she didn't care. He was in school halfway around the country, and she was going to move there to be with him. We knew we'd get by just fine. They seemed amicable, and it was understood how this would all play out. The day in court finally comes, and instead of what we all assumed, even my dad's lawyer, she goes to the court with all these crazy claims. He was an abusive alcoholic, he beat us and my mom nightly, he was crazy and no one would be safe in his care. My mom got full custody, she got 50% of his house and 50% of his retirement account. My dad was stunned that judgment would basically bankrupt him. In order for him to keep the house, he'd essentially have to clean out his retirement account and give her everything. The night of their divorce I went over to see him. He was almost catatonic. He just stared off in space the entire time and would mumble whenever I asked him a question. I've never seen anyone like that ever. My birthday was 2 days away and I asked if he wanted to do something for my birthday, and he just answered with, "Your mom has full custody. I will if she allows me to see you." I asked if I could drive his old truck to school, since I didn't yet have a car, and he just said no, that I needed to call my mom and have her pick me up. So that's what I did. And the next day in school, the day before my birthday, I'm sitting in our lunchroom when I hear, "Hey, isn't that your grandpa?" from a buddy of mine. I look over and see my grandpa and a cop making their way across the lunchroom toward me. They told me to grab my stuff, and in the office I found my sister there as well. We rode home with them, where we were also met by my little sister, and that's where they told us that our dad had killed himself, shortly after I left the previous night. To make matters worse, it all happened so quickly that nothing had been finalized. My mom dropped all her paperwork and legally became a widow and got everything: house, retirement, and his insurance policy. She also got Social Security benefits for us, a fact we didn't find out until much later. She basically took all the money and moved across the country with her new man, leaving us to care for ourselves for the most part. And to this day, when asked about raising us, she'll spin this story of a young widow, doing her best to raise 3 kids on her own. Sorry to say this, but your mom is a piece of shit. Yep, I'm fully aware. To this day, 20 years later, and we don't speak. I have other family and friends that will tell me I need to forgive her and move on. But there's just no way in my eyes. She killed my dad, and that's not something I will ever forgive her for. I had a coworker once where the wife racked up well over $150K in credit card debt right before she divorced him. He worked overtime for literally the rest of his life just to be able to survive. Unfortunately, he died from a heart attack, probably due to all the stress that she left him with. My dad divorced his first wife and promptly took his name off of all the credit cards. She proceeded to buy all kinds of shit thinking she'd stick him with the bill. She was not happy to hear she was the only one on the account. My ex and I separated before the divorce. She agreed to watch the dog while I found a new place. She had the dog put down instead. My dad basically appealed custody over and over, bringing in new friends to back his character. This forced my mom to seek a lawyer to defend herself. My dad is and was a massive problem gambler, had no permanent home, and was pretty shit at practical life stuff, nutrition, education, etc. This forced my mom to dig into all her savings to pay legal fees to keep a child anybody with a sound mind would know is much more capable than my dad. So in the end, my dad basically made my mother bankrupt trying to get custody over a child he wouldn't have been able to raise. I'm an accountant, not a divorce lawyer. Had a client hide Ziploc bags of ground meat throughout the house, in air vents, the attic, behind water heater, etc. I think it was at least 20 to 30 bags that took months to find all of them. Worked at a law firm that was subpoenaed as part of a divorce between a partner at the firm and a partner at another major law firm. The woman issued more than 70 subpoenas to banks, firms, investment companies, you name it, because she was convinced he had squirreled away $20+ million overseas behind her back. It got so bad that she dug up receipts from 25 years ago to try to put together this grand conspiracy puzzle. In the end, after she racked up $1.5 million in legal fees, and 7 different lawyers, the judge said this shit is ridiculous, there was no conspiracy, and you are not entitled to a portion of this phantom $20 million. Mind you, this was a major law firm partner who was acting this way. She made millions per year in her career, but she apparently lost her mind. My in-laws are mega into food and wine, as in they literally travel the world on food and wine tours, are part of clubs, etc. They told me about a nasty divorce where the husband was the wine aficionado, not the wife, but the wife was pissed off about getting divorced. The husband got all the wines in their extensive cellar, but before he was able to correct them, the wife soaked every bottle to remove all of the labels. So technically the wine was not damaged, but the husband had no way to know what he was drinking for aging and pairing purposes, which is a huge deal to wine drinkers. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.